And did I miss any mayors? Thank you. I also wanted to shout out that I have my council vice president, Judy Toohey, here. She's also chair of Everett's Public Safety Committee. Thank you for joining us as well. So I'm very grateful that we're all here to talk about this. Our communities, large and small, urban and rural, are experiencing a disturbing rise in crime, especially violent crime. We're seeing more gun violence, more illegal possession of guns, more shots fired, more drug dealing, and more open drug use in our communities. We're also seeing more assaults and homicides, property crimes, street-level social issues, and other illicit behaviors, particularly in our downtown cores, that are a constant frustration for our businesses, our residents, and our visitors. My fellow mayors and I believe that there is nothing more important than ensuring everyone who lives, works, or visits our communities feel safe. We have been working together these past few months to come up with a new approach and new solutions. And today we are pleased to announce the outcome of this effort and the launch of a new organization to improve public safety in our cities. Our coalition will help us coordinate our approach to improving public safety. Our hope is that by bringing together local government and business leadership, that will allow us to pursue coordinated strategies and necessary changes to the criminal justice system among the public, private, and nonprofit sectors and make a real difference in our communities. Our purpose is to work collaboratively with all levels of government to address these issues. We need to take a realistic look at the problems, search for more effective solutions, and identify how we can more effectively work together. As cities, we have already been working pretty aggressively on these issues. We've been investing in our first responders, embedded social workers, housing, services, and other public safety strategies. We are going to continue to do those efforts and build on those, but we also need help from the state and other branches of government. There are some really good ideas that are being promoted among the legislature. For instance, Senator Lovick's proposal to create regional criminal justice training centers is a smart idea to prepare candidates to help us fill much needed positions in our police departments. But we need more ideas like that. And forming this diverse coalition of mayors and business leaders, I believe we can generate more innovative ideas and find meaningful and effective solutions to our public safety challenges. It will require a balanced approach of social services and law enforcement, and we also have to address the weaknesses in the criminal justice system. So as mayors, we're committed to working together with urgency to advance these recommendations and policies and make our communities safer. I'm grateful to have the support of these fellow mayors with me, and with that, I'd like to introduce our co-chair, Mayor John Nearing. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mayor Franklin, and thanks to all the chiefs and other mayors that are here with us, and our council president from Marysville, Camille Norton, and Councilmember Mark James as well. Our city, just like every city in Snohomish County, continues to wrestle with these problems that Mayor Franklin just described. So I'm really excited about this new organization and the help that it can bring and the ideas that we'll be able to bring to the table through it. You know, increases in homelessness, in drug addiction, mental illness, and the resulting increases in criminal activity impact every one of us. You can't have a healthy, vibrant community unless people know that they are safe. Increased crime not only puts individuals and businesses at risk, but it also increases the cost of everything that we buy. One thing that I'd also like to emphasize is the bipartisan nature of this effort, underscored by the fact that Mayor Franklin and I are working together as co-chairs of this organization. This really is not a Democrat or a Republican issue. It's an issue that impacts everybody in our communities, and it's an issue whose importance should rise above partisan politics. There are some actions certainly that our legislators in Olympia can play a key role in helping. As Mayor Franklin said, both funding for social service organizations and law enforcement agencies is one. We also need to work together in responding to the Blake decision that decriminalized virtually all drug possession in this state. As we move ahead, we have to acknowledge that sometimes jail is the best short-term solution while someone can get some help long-term that we're looking for. It shouldn't be our default in every case to use jail as a tool, but it has to be a workable option when circumstances demand it. We believe that we should be pursuing criminal justice reforms that would allow officers to better use their training, their experience, and their judgment out in the field. It's unrealistic to expect our dedicated law enforcement professionals to cure every societal problem. But they are an important and critical piece to the puzzle, and we need to give them every opportunity to do their job safely and effectively. And finally, we really need more transparency regarding charging decisions, bail, convictions, and sentencing to increase public confidence in the judicial system. These are the type of issues that we're all looking to address through this new coalition, and we look forward to working with everybody in our communities and hopefully throughout the region to address this. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Mayor of Lake Stevens, Brett Galey.
Thanks, John. Mayor Brett Galey from the city of Lake Stevens. I'd like to acknowledge my police chief here, Jeff Bazzizo. He's been doing great work for me up in the great city of Lake Stevens. I'd like to emphasize a couple points that have already been mentioned. First, these are countywide issues and problems, and they demand countywide strategies and solutions. Our hope in forming this coalition is that we can take a comprehensive approach. Second, this is the first time that a coalition of Snohomish County local government and business leadership will be coming together and taking on these issues. We're blessed with a strong business community in our county, and we have had introductory conversations with our business leaders in the area, and the feedback we've gotten from them is a strong backing for what we're doing. They've told us that there's interest in this sort of a collaborative effort, and that we should contact them once the coalition structure is in place. Now that the coalition has been launched, we'll be circling back to those businesses and to others and to share our plans and elicit their support for our efforts. We think the opportunity of this type of engagement is very exciting. And I'd also like to add as well that this really is a city, a county, but really a statewide issue, as we've also seen other coalitions starting to form after we started this coalition around the state, specifically South King County mayors coming together with a similar message, and that's exciting. Additionally, the Association of Washington Cities has upped this effort in fixing the Blake decision and our pursuit policy issues to one of their top tier legislative priorities. So it's exciting. It's good to see not only cities and counties working on this issue, but as well as a statewide effort. So with that, I'd love to introduce my fellow
cities in Snohomish County. I can attest to the fact that these issues don't discriminate based on the size of your city, urban or rural. We deal with these issues. They're not just urban issues. And Mayor Franklin and I last year brought together a roundtable to talk about behavioral health. We brought law enforcement, service providers, mental health professionals, prosecutors, and we saw the clear patterns between what happens on the streets of Sultan, what happens on the streets of Everett. So this really is a collective effort, as you've heard. I'm proud to join with these mayors as we work together towards safer communities for all of our residents. This coalition is really an exciting opportunity to identify the issues affecting public safety, developing solutions with a broad range of stakeholders, and bringing people together around a common cause. As you heard Mayor Galey talk about, this isn't just a Snohomish County thing. There's mayors from across the state who are looking at what we're doing here in Snohomish County and how to implement that in their own communities. So I'm confident that by coming together with a united voice, not only will we improve public safety for Snohomish County, but across the state of Washington. So with that, I appreciate you all being here, and we'll stand for questions.
Thank you. So we'd like to open it up for questions, and you can direct them at individual mayors or all of us as a group.
I know that you guys have a problem with the way some state laws are written. What sort of progress are you making? Do you have lawmakers helping you with this fight down in Olympia? And do you have some muscle? And that's what it's going to require.
Absolutely. I think since we've started these conversations up here, we've had some really good conversations. Mayor Nearing and I have called a number of our elected leaders in Olympia, and we very much look forward to working with them. I think that their intents with some of the changes that were made were very positive, and we're seeing maybe some efforts that didn't work in the way they intended. And so our goal is to work collaboratively with them on solutions. We're still drafting what those will look like, but we'll work together with our law enforcement leaders, our police chiefs, and then bring ideas to our friends in Olympia.
Is there the political will to make that happen amongst the, I mean, you talked to your lawmakers, have they told you?
Yeah. They have. I know that there's political will to fix the Blake decision, and we're going to be very forceful in what and clear in what type of fix we think we need to see there.
You described two-pronged. You described the business leadership as part of the coalition and why they might not be here today. And secondly, I hear a lot of talk about mental health, homelessness. Why are those organizations or at least health agencies not part of the coalition?
So the business leaders are not here today because this is the first day of our coalition formally being a coalition. The mayors, we've been working for many months together on this work on public safety and kind of forming and norming our mayor group. And now that we have formalized our coalition of mayors and business leaders for safer communities, the mayors behind me and others across the county will be reaching out to business leaders and inviting them to join us.
And talk about the component for health, mental health, public health, homelessness, why they're not part of the coalition.
You know, I think we started with mayors and business leaders as just the group that we wanted to advocate for safer communities. And of course, we're going to be working with public health. We're going to be working with nonprofit organizations. They are partners that we're already working with on some of the key solutions in our communities that we have been implementing, and we will continue to work with those leaders.
What about resources and budgeting? Where are you going to get the funding to do all of the things?
Yeah, so the cities are each contributing small amounts depending on their size and engagement level with the organization, but they're pretty minor amounts. The cost of this organization isn't high, as most of the work will be done by the mayors. So we really just have some communications professionals we're working with and a bookkeeper to kind of manage our finances. But as we get more contributions, as more business leaders join us, we have possibility of doing more. And please step in if anyone.
Is this a nonprofit?
It's a 501c4 organization.
When you say you want to fix the Blake decision, what specific change to the legislation would you like to see?
I would need one of my expert leaders in law enforcement and one of our city attorneys probably to walk through what exactly those changes would need to be. But right now, when somebody is openly using illegal hardcore drugs in our communities, we have to offer services 3 times before we can engage them in the criminal justice system. And that seems like a really good idea on paper, but in practice, you offer services to somebody who's high, and they're not in a place to accept those services. They're not in a place to accept those referrals. I'll use an example. Our COET team, our Community Outreach and Enforcement team, has referred 294 people to services since this Blake decision. And of those 294, 0 have accepted services since then. Before this, we were able to successfully get a larger number of people into services because we could use motivational interviewing, saying, I don't want you to have to go to jail. Jail's not the appropriate place for you. Treatment might be better. And we could use that technique to help get them into treatment. Or, as I think Mayor Nearing mentioned, although jail is not the perfect detox center, having somebody in jail for a few days detoxing, then they're in a better position to accept services at that point. And those are the types of fixes that we're going to need to address in there, and exactly what that looks like for the legislature. I need smarter people than me to put that in writing.
Can I ask how you knew 0 had taken them up? My understanding is that it's been very difficult to track any of those referrals.
So I know that there's probably referrals that haven't even been tracked. These are the ones we're tracking. And so the way we were able to track that is our Community Outreach and Enforcement team, which is made up of our law enforcement team and our embedded social workers. And the referral they make is to our own social workers. And so our own social workers said, okay, none of those 294 people have followed up with us to get into the services that we want to help them get into.
Mayor, can we talk to some of the folks
Please.
in law enforcement? Saw the video you guys produced a couple of weeks ago. It's impressive and frightening. I mean, can you talk about, reiterate what, excuse me, your life is like on the streets with the way the laws are framed now? Can you come to the microphone?
Yeah. Eric Scarpin, Marysville Police Department, the chief there for 2 years. I can say the past 2 years have been very chaotic for law enforcement. We've seen our law enforcement officers as well as our public put at a greater risk because of some of the actions that we've seen from an emboldened criminal element out there. We really owe it to our community to meet their expectations with what they expect law enforcement to be able to deliver. And we truly owe it to the men and women that continue to serve our communities to ensure that the laws allow things to work well for them and for them to carry out their jobs. Yeah, I gave the example the other day. I received a complaint to my office. They said, "Chief, I called 911 because my car was being stolen. Your officers came, and then they watched my car drive away." If that car is the only way that that person can get to work to provide for their family, we clearly didn't meet their expectations with being able to stop those folks because of the ways the law is this day.
Because you can't chase them.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's a middle of the night example. Thank you.
If I could jump in on a couple of those subjects. So several of you, I'm sure, as reporters, have run stories in the past on Mayor Naring's awesome program in which he was using the co-ed team type of program in Marysville and getting people off the street and getting people healthy and getting people fixed. Not only people, but these are our kids, our cousins, our aunts, our uncles, our brothers, our sisters, right? So that program was working. It was working great. It doesn't work anymore because of the Blake decision. There's no teeth in that program anymore. And the people on the street know it. Those cousins, those brothers, those sisters, those people we're trying to get healthy again, it doesn't work for them anymore. So we've got to find that solution that allows social workers and police officers to engage our folks on the street who are addicted and get them off the street and get them healthy and get them back to their families. That's one point. The other point to talk about with your question, this group formed, at the beginning of the pandemic, one of the things the mayors did is we started to meet together online, unfortunately. We're now meeting together more often. But that created a really powerful coalition within the Snohomish County mayors. And after Officer Dan Rocha's murder in March, this group got together and really started to deep dive on how do we fix our cities? How do we make it so that a multiple time felon in the city of Everett, in broad daylight, in a Starbucks parking lot, doesn't feel emboldened to be carrying firearms, moving firearms, openly within cars, and then murdering a police officer, and then driving away. It's decisions and policies like the Blake decision and the pursuit policy that embolden a felon like him. And what we've got to think about is we have this UPF problem, unlawful possession of a firearm. I did just some quick stats in the city of Lake Stevens, small city, right? Since 2016, 32 UPF cases, unlawful possession of a firearm by a felon. 1 prosecution. Who kills people on the street? Felons kill felons. Felons kill cops. Felons kill other people who are innocently bystanding because they don't have a problem. They have no fear carrying a firearm. And it's because they're emboldened by policies such as Blake and the pursuit policy that they'll further carry on these criminal acts. And I think that there's a lot of things we need to fix in the state of Washington when it comes to the criminal. And I'm not saying everyone needs to be in jail. I absolutely don't think that as a 21-year police officer, retired. I know that the jail is not always the answer, but we need to give that tool back to law enforcement so that we can get our people, get our families back together and our kids off the street who are addicted.
There's a concern that prosecutions aren't happening at the numbers you'd like. Where is the prosecutor's office?
So the mayors have actually met with the prosecutor's office and had a really good conversation. And one of the conversations progress that was made was a commitment from the prosecutor to prioritize specific cases such as unlawful possession of firearms, because this has been a major frustration for all of us. It is definitely one of the most dangerous things that we need to prosecute against, and so there has been a commitment, verbal commitment from our prosecutor to focus on some of those key cases like that moving forward.
Years, we talk to a lot of people on the streets who say sometimes that they're ready or not ready for treatment, or if they are, and it's not available to them immediately, kind of you miss the opportunity, right? How do you tackle that issue? Not to mention, the City of Seattle's Mayor Harrell just announced a $250 million investment in terms of housing, sometimes what's called first housing. Is that something considered perhaps, or we're not even thinking?
Well, the City of Everett has been investing in housing for quite some time. We have permanent supportive housing, we have pallet shelter housing, we are working with nonprofit partners to increase our housing inventory, and I know that the cities behind me are working on these solutions as well at the appropriate size for their communities. So you have a commitment from this community to build and develop more housing. I think that mental health, behavioral health system has been underfunded for decades. So there's no one elected body that is to blame. This is a system that has been underfunded for a very long time. And so one of the things that we are advocating for, educating the community about this, is that we need more resources there. Jail has been a de facto mental health institution, and it's not the safest and the most appropriate. We should have mental health institutions. But we also have a gap. I'll tell a story of an individual who has been caught in the city of Everett on camera, engaged in property crime and other illicit behavior. We know who it is. We've arrested them, and they have been deemed not mentally well enough to stand trial, so they're released. But they're not mentally well enough. They're not unwell enough to be committed, involuntarily committed. So what that gap is creating is this person now has to live outside in Everett because neither system is accepting them. They clearly desperately need help. They either need to be held accountable for their actions, or if they're too sick, they need to get treatment, right? But the treatment system's not accepting them either. So we need to close that gap.
Can I clarify, is the treatment system not accepting them because they simply don't have the capacity?
Nope, this is a case where they will not be involuntarily committed because they're not sick enough. But they're too sick to stand trial.
In a press release sent out by your coalition, there's reference to rising crime rates. I'm wondering where those numbers are and what source your coalition has gotten.
Sure. The source of our coalition is each of our individual police departments. I'll use some data from Everett. So for 5 years leading up to this time, so 2016 to 2020, we saw a decrease in crime. In 2021, we saw an increase of 8%. In 2022, we saw a 19% increase from 2021. Shots fired calls are up in 2022 by 66% in Everett. Drive-by shootings are up by 123% in Everett. Over the last?
These are last 2 years.
These are the last 2 years. So that's a significant and frightening increase.
Can I ask,
Did you attribute that to the changes in the law?
I think that I have to attribute it to a lot of different things, right? We had a perfect storm of events, some of which are some of these changes that we're talking about.
for Mayor Neri, can I ask you as far as possibilities for Blake fix?
Yeah.
I believe you were one of the cities that originally, before the lawmakers passed their bill, had implemented your own policy because of
Yeah.
the Supreme Court decision. Is that the primary goal for you?
Well, yeah, I mean, our city council stepped in, I think, the week after and put things, put an ordinance together that we could go back to what we were doing. And I think, and we would take that as a solution, although I don't think it's really a great idea to have each individual city doing something different across the state. So that's where we're asking the state legislature to come up with something more effective than what works today. And I think part of the problem is we've got into this scenario both with Pursuits and with Blake of saying, well, we're going to dictate from a political body how to handle a criminal justice issue or a societal problem like that. We don't, and I think we have to trust the professionals in uniform. Nobody in our cities was using jail as a place to house people with drug problems as a permanent solution. Like I said in my comments, it was a short-term solution with a long-term goal in mind. And I'll give you an example. A good chunk of our referrals to drug detox and drug treatment centers came out of our jail, out of our municipal jail, an ever-increasing one. And that isn't happening right now. I can tell you personal stories of people who were in jail, had an ex-spouse or somebody contact me up in the mayor's office, say, hey, can the social worker go back in and give them another chance? They've had a chance to detox. And we would move heaven and earth to get them into a treatment center. And we've got stories of them now working and back with families and all that. Well, imagine what happens now when we don't have that option and you go offer them services. And like Mayor Franklin said, virtually none of them take it. So they die under a bridge, they lay around in a park and shoot up every night. That's just that's not compassion in our eyes. It doesn't help the business owners, the citizens in the community, or the person that's sick and addicted. And with regards to pursuits too, almost none of our agencies ever pursue, right? But what you can't do is tell the criminals, guess what? We're never going to pursue you, or you get what we have today. 7 of our police cars getting rammed over the course of a few months. People in a Fred Meyer parking lot watching somebody walk out with something, get in a car as an officer stands there and race off. You know, how embarrassing is that for our police departments? And how awful is that for a citizen to live in a community and think, well, so the police watch that happen? I mean, it just doesn't work. And so I think we have to get back to an area of trust that we as elected leaders and our police departments are using these tools for long-term solutions, right? We use the possibility of going to jail to entice people to get the long-term help they need to get well. We use the very rare possibility of a pursuit that says somebody's going to stop and say, you know what, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to obey what the officer says. And it's safer for the community and it's better off for really everybody involved. And that's really what we're asking for. And so hopefully we can get some progress here.
If I could just add.
Might mean in the end for them. The end, once your coalition is complete with business leaders, whatever program you expect to hit this thing, what would they accomplish specifically?
So I think there's legislative fixes that we talked about. There's some issues I think where we can have some transparency and increased confidence in the prosecutorial decisions that are made, some of the judicial decisions. You mentioned one of you had a really good question. Maybe it was you about, and we were experiencing this when we didn't have the Blake decision and we were getting a lot of people into treatment centers. We were experiencing those bottlenecks. So we need some funding for mental health, for drug treatment, for detox. We would hope to see that. And I think we need to. This is something we haven't really talked about today, but there is a police hiring crisis in this state. In the city of Marysville, Chief Scarpin's deploying about 64% of the budgeted police officers that we have. That means we have 36% of our budgeted, city council's budget. It's not a money problem. We got plenty of dollars for it. We just can't find people that want to do the job in Washington state. We used to get lateral police officers from all over, Alaska, Las Vegas, Utah, Idaho. We haven't had any in the last year and a half from out of state. Nobody wants to come here and practice policing anymore. Well, why is that? Well, we have to turn that narrative around, for not just for Marysville, but that exists all throughout Snohomish County and the Puget Sound. And I think that's one of the goals also of our group is how do we work with, not against, how do we work with everybody from all parties, it's a nonpartisan group, to make it an appealing place for law enforcement officials to come and work again? How do we make it that way so that Seattle has enough staff, and so that Everett and Marysville and Arlington and Linwood, so we all have the staff that we need to keep our community safe? Because nobody does better when you're only deploying 2/3 of the police officers that you should have out there. It's not good for the officers' mental health, not good for your community, and frankly, it's not good for all those people out there who need our help. And so those are 4 of the things that we would work on.
And if I could just add too, and it was talked about, but want to reemphasize that this is bigger than just legislative fixes. You know, working with the prosecutors, working with the judicial system, but also, as Mayor Franklin mentioned, the behavioral health system and the capacity within that system. We had an individual in Sultan who was declared incompetent to stand trial for a long list of crimes. He was ordered to Western State. His bed date got pushed 3 times, 4 months later. Eventually, the judge, rightfully so, said you can't keep them in jail any longer because they haven't been convicted or they haven't been found guilty. When we called down to Western State to say, why has this bed date been pushed 3 different times? Because they don't have the staffing. They've got the facility, they didn't have the staffing. And one of the things that Mayor Franklin and I found when we did our roundtable around behavioral health was that certain mental health professionals, after graduating with their master's degree, are making $18 an hour. It's not a surprise that we're facing a staffing shortage. I don't have the answers today to the staffing issues within that, but I think that's another one of an important part of this system that as mayors, we're certainly wanting to engage with mental health professionals, with organizations to make sure that we have the staffing so that even if we build facilities, whether it's for behavioral health, mental health, substance abuse, that we've got the providers to actually help people through that system. So that's another big thing that I think we're going to be focusing on.
All of these things that you all are talking about are, as I'm sure you all know, incredibly big lifts. The difference being that you're all talking amongst each other and coordinating. It's going to take time.
Yeah.
What are we going to do in the interim?
Baby steps.
Can I say one more thing? Because there's been some question about why certain groups aren't here or whatnot, and we are working with all those groups. I think we've described that. But I had a business owner, coincidentally, in my office last week, Friday. And this wasn't coordinated at all. In fact, I told this particular business owner about this group, and they said, please sign me up as one of the business owners when you get to that stage. But the point that she was making was, you know, I know that you're doing everything you can. I know that your police department's doing everything you can. I don't know all the ways that these laws and we get to where we were today, but you're my mayor, and you're the only one I know to go to. And I think that's why we formed this is, you know, it's not that we're trying to push the problem to all these different directions, but we can be the conduit, because when people don't feel safe in their community, even if they trust that their local police department or their local elected officials are doing everything that they can, they go to us, typically as mayors, and say, please fix it. Work with whoever you need to work with and fix it. And I think that's part of what we're doing here is it's a long slog and a long, heavy lift, but if someone doesn't stand up and say anything, then there's no momentum and nothing gets going. So that's what we're up to.
I think we'll wrap it up if there's a couple final questions.
As the nonprofit grows, will you be hiring eventually a legislative? Are you going to send a person who's going to go down to Olympia for you on your behalf, or is it all on your shoulders?
It is a possibility that we would hire a lobbyist at a future point. We're not there yet. Right now, we are focused on just educating our community on what we're doing and how we're working together to accomplish that. But as we move forward with this work, it's a possibility in the future.
As you launch the nonprofit and you're going to have the business leaders, have you had any business leaders already put some money into your nonprofit? Or are they ready to write the check?
We launched it today, and so we do have folks ready to write the check, but no contributions as of yet because we haven't invoiced them.